Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I begin in the name of the God whose mercy is profound, whose kindness is forever. This is the third session of our attempt to understand Arabic language for the purpose of learning the Quran and its meanings directly. In the first two sessions, I had devoted the attention of the participants on the building blocks for the purpose of being able to read Arabic. So I mentioned that those who already have the ability to read the Quran directly, for example, because they know Urdu or Persian or languages which have similar alphabets to Arabic, they need not go through those sessions. I hope that those who were not familiar with the Arabic alphabets are now in a position to join others who probably are going to have their very first session of the Arabic principles. And we will move forward to understand what exactly are the principles that are associated with Arabic language for us to understand how it operates and therefore to be able to understand the Quran. I begin, and obviously there are different ways of going through the process, but I am beginning with the mention of harakat and i'rab to make a point for the purpose of understanding the language. Harakat are in actual fact the vowels that are used in order for us to be able to properly pronounce a word. So for example, when I would write the word very dear to us, masjid, quite apart from these alphabets, Mim, Sin, Jim, Dal, because just mere mention of them is not going to make possible for us to read the word correctly unless we already know what its pronunciation is. We will need vowels. So we will put a fatha on Mim, jazm on Sin, kasra on Jim, but we will have to place some kind of a symbol above or below dal as well. Whatever we do, I'll talk about it later. But right now what I'm trying to explain is that these three symbols are actually in the category of harakat. They give us an understanding of how the word is to be pronounced properly. Those who are already familiar with Arabic do not normally need to know what those harakat are because they are implied. They already know what the word is and how it's pronounced. But for us, the non-Arabs, we need to know those harakat. However, their usefulness is only limited to the extent that we are able to pronounce words correctly when those harakat are correctly placed. However, the more important understanding and concept when it comes to the question of knowing the meanings of a word, the way it has been employed, utilized in a sentence, the important concept for that purpose is the concept of Arab. I'm not somebody who knows all languages well, but to the extent that I know, I have a feeling that probably there are very few other languages that have a similar concept to Arab. At least I dare say that it's not there in English, nor is it there in Urdu and similar languages. Arab is a symbol or call them series of symbols that are placed towards the very end of a word when it is used in a sentence. And the symbol gives you a very good indication of what exactly is the role of that word, that noun in the sentence. I'll talk more about it, but right now what I am trying to put across is that the Arab in Arabic are three. There are three categories. One of them is this masjidun. You might recall that this is actually dhamma. When it would come somewhere over here, it would be dhamma. But now when it comes towards the end, the same dhamma, it makes the word, the noun, come in the form of rafa. Rafa. That is, we might call it raf'un or rafa. So, masjidun is in the form of raf'un, rafa. That is, the word masjidun, the way it has been written, is in the rafa form. It means a masjid. Rafa, masjidun means a masjid, a mosque, any masjid, any mosque. When we place an alif lam before masjid, it would then drop one of the two symbols in tanween. When you have two symbols, two harakat coming together, whether it's two dhammas or two fathas or two kasras, they're called tanween. And the sound has a sound of noon, n. So masjidun, when you have before masjid alif lam, then one of them drops. And as far as the meaning is concerned, the change is that it is now the masjid. Masjidun is a masjid and al-masjid is the masjid. So in one case it's a common noun and the other it becomes a proper noun. It's alif lam is, I think would be fair to say, is almost the of English. Now, what we are trying to do is that we are trying to understand Arab. The other possibility for masjidun is, notice the word in the beginning is absolutely the same because the same pronunciation, it's the same word that is being written, but now I am writing it in the form of nasab. Nasab. Rafa, nasab. Let's call it rafa. I think I got it wrong. Rafa, nasab. And when you say masjidan and you write an alif, I think I mentioned it one of the earlier sessions that it's just a convention. You place an alif simply because there are two fatha and there is a need when writing it to have an alif added. You add alif lam and alif drops, and as in the case of rafa, one of the two symbols drops as well, and it becomes a single symbol to signify to show the presence of nasab on this word. The meanings are absolutely the same. In case of masjidan, it's a masjid. In case of al-masjida, it's the masjid. The only difference is that al-masjidu or masjidun is a noun which is in the form of rafa, Rafa, and masjidan or al-masjida is in the form of nasab. You must be wondering what's going on, because I mean, why is it there that you have Rafa and nasab, and later we're going to talk about jar? Well, just hold on, just be patient, and you would know why all this is happening. It really is very, very useful for us to be able to understand how these words are playing a role in the composition of a sentence. So we now move on to the third possibility, which is the possibility of jar, masjidin. Now, when we had masjidan, we put an alif here. There's nothing of that sort. It's the same word, but now it's in the form of jar. Nasabun, rafa'un, and jarrun. Here again, if you add al, you will drop one of them and it would become al-masjidi. And as far as the meanings are concerned, no difference whatsoever. It's either a masjid or the masjid. Now, brothers and sisters, you would be wondering as to why you have Arab at all. Because when, as I'm claiming, there is no change whatsoever in the meanings of the words, then what on earth is their contribution? For one thing, let's again recap. There are harakat, which are used for the purpose of clarifying what the correct pronunciation is. And then there are Arab, which come towards the very end of a noun. And there are three categories of Arab: Rafa, Nasab, or Jar. And I have mentioned before you the three symbols that signify, that symbolize Rafa, Nasab, and Jar. Now, you can be forgiven to imagine that if you have a dhamma or pesh at the end of a noun, it has to be in the form of Rafa. You can be forgiven to think, imagine, that if there is a fatha, one or two at the end of a noun, it is nasab. And likewise, if there is kasra, zair, towards the end of a noun, it has to be jar. Well, not necessarily, not always. One thing I have mentioned before, and let me repeat, that when it comes to Arab, it's actually the entire noun that is influenced by it. The Arab are those of nouns, while harakat are of alphabets, letters. Each one has a different harakat, but the entire noun together has one Arabi form, and that appears towards the very end of the noun. Now, when you have all these three possibilities in your mind, vaguely, you again might have a feeling that we have done all that needed to be done about Arab. Well, not necessarily. Let me tell you that there are some details to it which I hope that we are going to be able to do in this very session. And the details are that when you come to the question of, let's say, Rafa, the actual form of the noun, it changes, transforms when it changes its position vis-a-vis it being singular or double or plural. And the noun changes its form, its appearance, when it is feminine, singular, plural, or double. And then obviously there is a third dimension. One dimension is the number, singular, double, plural. The other dimension is masculine or feminine. We add these two dimensions together and we come up with a matrix. In that matrix, what you will find is that the very same word, noun, has 6 different forms, 6 dimensions, because of the numbers involved and because of the gender involved. So let's come up with one matrix. And don't forget that we are talking about Arab, and right now we are talking about Rafa. Now, when we will come up with an example, and the matrix is going to talk about one noun taking 6 different forms, we will have to talk about singular, we will talk about double, and we'll talk about plural. And here we have on the horizontal side masculine and feminine. Now, as you can see, we have 6 boxes. There is a noun which is singular and masculine. That noun, for example, let's take it as alim. Now, alim, as far as the first 3 letters are concerned, we have put the harakat. We don't normally put any harakat on alif when it is preceded by a fatha or zabar, because I mentioned it in one of these earlier presentations that when fatha is followed by alif, it's a prolonged, extended fatha, longer in its sound. So it's not alim, it's alim. Now, the important thing as far as Arab is concerned, it's alimun. Alimun, one scholar, and it's actually Rafa form. When you have double, and in Arabic, it's something, I wouldn't say absolutely unique. I'm sure there are other languages which have similar arrangements. But in Arabic, you have 3 different possibilities. It's either singular or plural, or there are 2, double. So when it comes to double, it's alimani. Alimani. Now, alimani means 2 scholars. And these 2 scholars, the way it's mentioned over here, it is in Rafa form. Now, this must be a little confusing, perplexing. But just hold on. Just take it, It's not our language. It's the Arabs who have been using it for ever since, ever since they started speaking it or employing it for their own communication purposes. So it's 2 scholars, and it's Arab is Rafa, even though you have a kasra at the end. That's what I was trying to say, that it would be incorrect to imagine that if you have a dhamma at the end of a noun, it really means that it has to be Rafa. No, not necessarily. Now, alimani is 2 alim, and more than 2 alim are alimuna. This is more than 2 scholars. And the word is expressed over here in Arab of Rafa. Then we come to feminine. A lady scholar is alimatun. There is a ta that is added at the end of a noun, and the noun gets converted into its feminine form. It's again, the Arab is Rafa. When it comes to double, the same feminine noun becomes alimatani. Two scholars, two women scholars. And then when it comes to plural, it's alimatun. Several women scholars. All of them in this matrix, all these six, singular, double, plural, masculine, feminine, they are all expressed in rafa form. Now, they are all also not particular but general. That is, they are not proper nouns, they are all expressed in the form of common nouns. You want to make these common nouns proper, you will add alif lam to each one of them, and this is going to become al-alim. You remove one of the two symbols toward the end, you put al-alim over here. At the end there is only one symbol and it would stay. Likewise over here, you add alif lam, and you might wonder why I am changing the shape of it. Well, it's a way, the manner. Ain is written with alif lam or without alif lam. So that's why it is al-alimu, al-alimani, al-alimuna. Likewise over here, it's al-alimatu. One of them goes. When you read this word alimatu and it comes towards the very end of the sentence, you would not pronounce ta. Instead, it would become ha, alima. This is going to be al-alimatani. Two women scholars, and they are all particular, and al-alimatu. This is many women scholars, and they are all known, they are all particular, not general, not anyone. They are common nouns with alif lam, and proper nouns with alif lam, and common noun without them. Now, as yet in this session, what I've done is that I have introduced you to the idea of harakat and how harakat are different from i'rab, and I have informed you that there are three different forms of i'rab: rafa, nasab, and jar, and we have started familiarizing ourselves with how rafa nouns look in the form of rafa. We'll talk about nasab and jar in the next session, and hopefully we'll also begin to talk about the reasons why these Arabic forms are needed. May the Almighty enable us to continue to understand Arabic for the purpose of learning the Quran.